Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Minh and I'm with Debbie and we're from NDIS Property Australia and you listen to the SDA Housing Podcast. Australia explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Debbie, hello.
Hello, Minh.
Next episode, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about how to rescue an underperforming SDA property.
So people out there who actually have a property which is underperforming or looking to invest into SDA should be aware of this topic and how they should embark on the process of rescuing an SDA property which is underperforming. Yeah. So your thoughts, Debbie? What's your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, look, I guess a lot of people may think they have an underperforming SDA property because when they first went about the acquisition process, whether that was purchasing it already built or buying it off the plan, they may have had expectations that they were going to have a property that was filled with maximum funded tenants and therefore get the maximum income. There are properties out there that are performing to that, not a lot. Most properties are not fully tenanted, and if they are, they may not have tenants or with the highest potential funding for that property. So I guess the first thing to consider is your property actually underperforming or is it still returning a decent return on investment?
Just a friendly reminder, everyone, SDA is not a guaranteed income product. The returns are dependent on the design category, the participant needs, the location, the compliance, and also the quality of the management as well. So just to be a friendly reminder, I guess.
Yeah. And look, let's use an actual example. If you've got a 3-tenant house somewhere in, say, Brisbane in the northern suburbs, and you're getting $150,000, which is not what you may have thought would be the maximum, you possibly purchased that property somewhere between $900,000 and $1.2 million, depending on when you bought it. If you're making $150,000 return a year, might not be 15 or 20% return, but I would say that's probably still quite a decent income. If you're considering that as underperforming, then you might need to just reconsider what other properties the property market is returning at the moment. Now, what would we consider an underperforming SDA? I guess something that is vacant or is only has only got one tenant with a lower income, and maybe it's actually negatively geared. Maybe you are not even making enough to cover your mortgage repayments.
And by the way, Debbie, with you talking about underperformance, I want to refer to what is actually performing. So if you're getting 90 to 120 grand a year income, this is a very generic statement. If you're making between 90 to 120 grand a year based on 1 or 2 tenants, you are performing. Yes. Everything under that, as in sub 90 and only or 1 tenant only, then you are definitely underperforming. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So, underperformance, I guess, just to reiterate, it's vacancy, it's lower than expected rental income. Maybe it's because the participant or participants aren't the correct fit for the property. Maybe there's excessive maintenance that you're having to fork out on. Maybe it's a property that looked good on paper, but it's not actually a good design, not in the best location. So as Minh said, the location, the providers, the marketing and referral networks of the providers, all of those things can help a property underperform. So,
Debbie, the common causes would be oversupply or a poor micro location. where there's thin participant demand or too many competing houses.
And that's probably one of the main reason why you've got an underperforming property, just because of that oversupply, which unfortunately exists in many locations.
Next one would be wrong design category or participant fit. So compliant but unattractive to the right participants.
Yeah. It's an IL property when there are no IL participants looking for a home. It's a HPS property when the only demand out there is for robust, etc.
Also, slow vacancy turnover. How do you assess? How do you absorb that?
Well, I guess if it is a niche category, say for example, robust, about 10% of participants across the country have robust, but that can be 15% in some locations, it can be 5% in others. So that is very much a niche SDA category, and there might just not be participants in that area.
Another one would be weak marketing and referral networks.
Yeah, so this will be on the part of the SDA provider, or even if you have one tenant and they're being looked after by a care provider, they might not have the referral networks to bring on new clients through support coordinators and similar that would be a match for the current tenant that they can then move a second tenant into the property.
Next one would be compliance or design shortcomings, which obviously reduces the confidence among referrers and operators as well.
Yeah, look, all properties that are registered obviously meet compliance. Doesn't mean they're good. We've always said it, the 3 Ds, design, desirability, and demand. And design and desirability are really everything. It's got to be the right fit for the participant. Doesn't matter how good the property looks on paper. Yes, it's compliant. Yes, it meets the guidelines. But if it's not a good design, it's going to be really hard to also make that property perform.
Exactly. What about overly optimistic financial assumptions, Debbie?
Yeah, well, I guess like I said at the beginning, if you are projecting that your property is going to be filled with the highest funded participants relevant for the property, your expectations are potentially a little optimistic, and very few participants have those highest levels of funding. HPS is 20-25% of the market. Most participants are funded for 3 share, not 2 share if you have a 2-tenant property. And you have a lot more participants out there with FA funding or IL funding. So, your returns, you need to be realistic about what the actual occupancy is going to look like. And going back to whether it's an oversupplied or a well-supplied area, you're unlikely to get full tenancy.
Yep. So I guess in a way, there's really 3 buckets here. You've got the market. Does the area have the real estate demand, or is it oversaturated? The product. Is the home suitable to the right participant group in the design category? And the operations. Is the property being managed and marketed effectively? And are the right referral networks being engaged to help fill up the house? So they're the 3 main buckets in terms of solutions, Debbie. So what's your feedback on fixing the fundamentals and repositioning the property and even upgrading the management model? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, look, I guess, if you are marketing the property but that's currently vacant, you really need to take a look at what your SDA provider is doing to market that property, how they're presenting it, their network, their referrals, who they're marketing it to, what they're marketing it to. Are they offering incentives to participants via yourself, obviously? Things like maybe rent-free for a period of time, fully furnished. There's other little incentives like that might, in an oversupplied market, encourage participants to choose your property against another one that looks just the same, and is, they've got to find a reason to choose yours. So that the SDA provider really needs to be very proactive in putting the property forward as the best possible property. Are there any maintenance issues? Make sure they get looked after and fixed quickly. If there's participants in the property, that should be dealt with very quickly by the SIL and the SDA. If it is a vacant property, we heard recently that someone had a tenant move out, the property was left vacant, for a couple of months, and when they approached their SDA provider to find out how progress was going to find a new tenant, the provider said, oh, we've only just gone into the property 2 months later and found that there's some broken windows and this issue and that issue. So again, that comes down to your relationship, I guess, with the SDA provider and how good they are at maintaining that property.
So, Debbie, what about the pivot decision? When does one stop attempting to rescue the asset?
Look, I think fundamentally, if your property is a poor design in an oversupplied area, and you're really struggling to get a tenant or to keep tenants in the property,
I reckon you bite the bullet and sell it, Debbie.
I would be doing that, or just revert to marketing the property as regular residential. I mean, a lot of people ask me, can I rent this property to non-NDIS participants, to non-SDA participants? Yes. For those of you who aren't quite sure, absolutely, you own the property, you can do what you want with it. It's just there are obviously things to consider renting it on the open market, especially if it's been built to high physical support and is a wheelchair-friendly home. It might not look as attractive to potential tenants. But then again, with the current rental market, I think, people are desperate for housing at the moment. So anywhere. So it really shouldn't be too difficult to rent it on the open market or sell it, and not sell it as an SDA asset, sell it as a regular home.
Yep. So just to close off on this episode, I guess rescuing an underperforming SDA is really about one magic fix. It comes down to really understanding the real reason why it's underperforming, and you need to use some common sense, also some feedback from the providers in the area and the actual SDA provider, just to make the right assumptions and being honest to yourself about whether the current strategy you're in actually still fits your portfolio and also the market. So, there's one takeaway today, and that is really don't judge the property too quickly, but don't ignore the warning signs either. So the best outcomes come from combining a good housing, good management, and a genuine understanding of the participant needs in the area. So that's all I have to say. Debbie, any final words from you about this topic?
Yeah, look, just be realistic and don't be overly optimistic that you're going to get higher income down the track if you're not getting it now. If you are, most areas of Australia, bar maybe most of New South Wales, some of the inner city areas, most areas are well supplied. So you're unlikely to get full tenancy at the top incomes. So just be realistic and assume that, as Minh said earlier, 90 to 120,000 is probably going to be a good income on an SDA property these days. If that doesn't work for you, then you'll need to rethink things.
Yeah. But just to summarise this episode and the solutions here, how to rescue an underperforming SDA property. Number 1, rent it to the normal market. Number 2, rent it to a SIL provider, head lease. Number 3, look at your exit strategy, as in selling it off as an empty SDA investment, or selling it off as a tenanted normal rental. Number 5 would be just to look at refinancing. Okay. And that's about it, really. I've got no other ideas for how to rescue an underperforming SDA property here, is it? No.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's a house or an apartment, whatever you've got. And it's property. It's valuable. So, yeah.
All good.
Be sensible about it, I guess.
All good. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.